The first contraction buckled my knees right as I reached for the doorknob. Inside, I heard the TV and my mother-in-law's scoff, followed by the sharp click of the deadbolt sliding home. My husband texted me just one sentence. "Don't make a scene. Mom says you are being dramatic." Staring at the porch light reflecting on my phone, I realized they were not just locking the door, they were locking away my life. So I played along. Then I changed every lock and froze our accounts cold. My name is Zara Cruz, and at 33 years old, I stood on my own front porch realizing that my entire life had been a carefully constructed lie. I had just returned from my 38-week checkup, my ankles swollen to the size of grapefruits, carrying a reusable grocery bag heavy with pharmacy supplies in one hand and my keys in the other. The Richmond humidity was oppressive, a wet blanket that made my maternity dress cling to my back. All I wanted was to get inside, sit in the air conditioning, and wait for the baby who was due any day now. I set the heavy bag down on the welcome mat to find my key. As I straightened up, I felt it, a sharp, distinct pop, low in my belly, followed immediately by a warm, undeniable gush of fluid soaking my legs and pooling around my sandals. My water broke. Panic, cold and sharp, pierced through the exhaustion. I dropped the keys. My hands shook violently as I bent to retrieve them. I jammed the house key into the lock, desperate to get inside, to get to the towels, to get to the hospital bag sitting by the stairs. I turned the key. It stopped dead. I frowned, wiping sweat from my eyes. I tried again, wiggling it, pulling it back a fraction of an inch. Nothing. The key slid in, but the cylinder refused to turn. It felt stiff, foreign. I checked the key again. It was the same key I had used this morning. It was the same key I had used for 5 years. "Evan," I called out, rattling the doorknob. "Evan, the door is stuck." Suddenly, a contraction hit me. It wasn't the dull cramping I had felt for weeks. This was a sledgehammer to the spine. I gasped, doubling over, gripping the cold brass handle to keep from collapsing into the puddle beneath me. Through the wood of the door, I heard footsteps, heavy, deliberate footsteps. "Evan!" I screamed, the pain tearing the name from my throat. "Open the door! It is happening!" The footsteps stopped right on the other side. I could feel someone standing there. I waited for the click of the deadbolt. I waited for the door to swing open. Instead, I heard my mother-in-law, Colleen. "Don't open it," she said. Her voice was muffled by the door, but clear enough to stop my heart. "She will just act out. She is looking for attention." I froze. "Colleen, open the door. My water broke." "Don't listen to her." Colleen's voice drifted, as if she was walking away from the door, back toward the living room. "She is just jealous because you are taking care of me today. It is all a performance." I scrambled for my phone, my fingers slippery. I dialed Evan. I could hear his phone ringing inside the house. I heard the ringtone cut off. He had answered. "Evan!" I yelled into the phone. "I am locked out. The key doesn't work. I am in labor right now." "Zara, keep your voice down," Evan said. He sounded annoyed, the way he did when I asked him to take out the trash during a game. "Mom is resting. She has a migraine. You are being incredibly loud." "I am in labor," I sobbed, terror rising in my chest. "Why won't the key turn? Did you change the locks?" "We had to fix the mechanism, remember?" He lied. The lie was so lazy it felt like a slap. "Look, if you are really in labor, just drive yourself to the hospital. You are a big girl. Stop making a scene. You are stressing Mom out." "Evan, I can't drive. I am on the ground." "Stop being dramatic," he snapped. "Call an Uber if you have to." The line went dead. I stared at the phone, my vision blurring. Another contraction rolled over me, forcing a guttural cry from my lips. I sank to my knees on the rough concrete of the porch. I was alone. I was locked out of the house I bought, the house I paid for, while my husband and his mother sat inside protecting their peace. "Hey, miss, are you okay?" I looked up. Mrs. Gable, the neighbor from 2 houses down, was standing on the sidewalk walking her dog. She looked horrified. "Help!" I wheezed. She dropped the leash and ran up the driveway. "Oh my God," she said, looking at the water on the porch and my pale face. Is the baby coming?" "Locked out," I managed to say. "They won't open the door." Mrs. Gable looked at the front door, then at the windows where the lights were clearly on. She looked back at me, her face hardening. "Do you want me to call 911?" I nodded, tears streaming down my face. "Yes, please." She pulled out her phone, her hands shaking slightly. "Yes, I need an ambulance at 412 Oakwood Lane. A woman is in active labor on her front porch. She is locked out. No, nobody is coming to help her." I curled into a ball on the welcome mat, listening to the drone of the television inside. They knew. They absolutely knew. And they had decided that locking me out was more important than the birth of Evan's son. Minutes later, the wail of sirens cut through the neighborhood. Red and blue lights flashed against the siding of my house, illuminating the closed blinds. I watched the window, waiting for Evan to run out. Shamed by the noise, shamed by the public spectacle. Nothing. The house remained silent as a grave. The ambulance pulled up. 2 EMTs rushed up the driveway with a stretcher. "We got you, honey, we got you," one of them said, lifting me onto the gurney. "How far apart are the contractions?" "Fast," I gasped. "They are coming fast." Mrs. Gable stood by the railing, looking at the front door with pure disgust. "Do you want me to bang on the door again? Make them come out?" "No," I whispered. "Don't bother." They wheeled me down the driveway. I turned my head to look back at my house. It looked warm and inviting from the outside, the perfect suburban dream. But the door was a solid barrier, a wooden sentence handed down by the 2 people who were supposed to love me. As they loaded me into the back of the ambulance, my phone buzzed. I lifted it, my hand trembling. It was a text from Evan. "Don't make a big deal out of this. You are making Mom look bad in front of the neighbors with that ambulance. We will come when you calm down." I stared at the screen. The cruelty of it was breathtaking. He wasn't worried about the baby. He wasn't worried about me. He was worried about his mother's reputation. Something inside me snapped. It wasn't a loud snap. It was the quiet, metallic click of a safety being switched off. The fear evaporated, replaced by a cold, hard clarity. I opened the banking app on my phone. The screen loaded. I saw the balance in our joint checking account, $18,000, then the savings, $40,000. I looked at the house one last time as the ambulance doors began to close. If they like locking doors so much, I thought, the pain of the contraction sharpening my focus like a blade, then I will show them what a real lockout looks like. My thumb hovered over the transfer button. I wasn't going to just change the locks. I was going to change the entire landscape of their lives. "Ma'am, try to breathe," the medic said. "I am breathing," I said, my voice steady for the first time that night. "I am breathing just fine." I tapped the screen. The first transfer began processing. By the time I reached the hospital, the money would be gone, and so would the wife they thought they could control. This was not an isolated incident. The deadbolt clicking shut in my face was simply the final, violent punctuation mark on a sentence they had been writing for years. It is easy to look back now and see the architecture of my own erasure, but when you are living inside it, you just think you are compromising for the sake of a happy marriage. You convince yourself that losing pieces of your autonomy is the price of admission for having a family. I bought the Colonial on Oakwood Lane 3 years before I met Evan. It was my name on the deed, my credit score that secured the mortgage, and my bonuses from Marrowgate Logistics that paid for the renovation of the kitchen. I remembered the day I signed the closing papers. I felt like a queen surveying her kingdom. Then Evan moved in with his cardboard boxes of unsold inventory and his collection of college t-shirts, and the linguistic shift began almost immediately. It went from being my house to our home, which sounded romantic at first, but soon, it wasn't just our home, it was his territory. Colleen did not just visit, she invaded. I had given Evan a spare key for emergencies when we were dating, and that key somehow migrated onto his mother's keychain within a month of our wedding. I would come home from a 10-hour shift at the logistics center, exhausted and craving silence, only to find Colleen in my kitchen, rearranging my pantry because my system was illogical. "I just moved the spices, Zara," she would say, her voice dripping with that weaponized sweetness Southern women master so well. "You can't cook properly if the cumin is hiding behind the paprika. I am doing you a favor." When I complained to Evan, he would shrug, his eyes never leaving the television screen. "Mom is just trying to help. Babe, she knows how to run a house. You should be grateful she cares enough to organize your mess." That was the pattern. I was the chaotic element. His mother was the order. I was the breadwinner, bringing in a steady 6 figures while Evan chased fluctuating commissions that rarely materialized. Yet he insisted on managing the finances. He called it taking the burden off my shoulders. I let him do it because I was tired. I let him set up the spreadsheets and move money between accounts because it made him feel like the man of the house. And I thought letting him have that dignity was worth the fee of my own ignorance. Things curdled the moment the pregnancy test turned positive. Before the baby, I was just disorganized in their eyes. Once I was pregnant, I became incompetent. Colleen stopped being a nuisance and became a warden. She started showing up at my prenatal appointments, sitting in the chair next to the exam table while Evan waited in the car or stayed at work. When the doctor asked how I was feeling, Colleen would answer, "She is swelling a lot," Colleen told Dr. E. Halloway during my second trimester, cutting me off before I could speak. "She eats too much sodium. I told her to stop with the takeout, but she is stubborn." I sat there on the crinkly paper, half naked and vulnerable, while my mother-in-law discussed my body as if it were a public utility that I was managing poorly. "I am fine, Colleen," I said, my voice tight. "My blood pressure is normal." "For now," she sniffed, "you need to think about the baby, not your appetite." Evan was the enforcer of her policies. I would come home to find he had thrown out the coffee I bought because Mom says caffeine causes jitters in the womb. He canceled my plans with friends because Mom says you need to rest this weekend. Every sentence out of his mouth began with those 2 words, "Mom says." It was as if he had no voice of his own, just an echo chamber where her opinions bounced around until they became his laws. I started to feel like a surrogate in my own marriage. They weren't caring for me. They were maintaining the vessel that carried their legacy. The breaking point should have been the text message. It happened 2 months ago. I was heavily pregnant, my back aching constantly, and I had left my phone in the kitchen. I picked up Evan's phone to check the time, and a message from Colleen popped up on the lock screen. Is she still complaining about the nursery paint? I knew I shouldn't snoop, but my thumb hovered over the screen, and I unlocked it. The code was his birthday. Simple and unimaginative. I scrolled up. Evan had replied, "Yeah, she wants the yellow. I told her it is too bright." Colleen, "Yellow is ugly. Stick to the gray. Don't let her win this one." Evan, "I know. I am handling it. I need her soft, so she is easy to control after birth. If she thinks she is tired now, wait until the kid is here. She will agree to anything." I stared at the words, the white letters on the gray bubble burning into my retinas. I need her soft, like I was a piece of meat he was tenderizing, like I was an opponent he was wearing down. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic rhythm that the baby must have felt. I took a screenshot and sent it to my secret email account, a habit I had developed in my line of work where documentation was king. I deleted the evidence from his sent folder and put the phone back exactly where I found it. That night, I lay in bed next to him, listening to his rhythmic breathing. He reached out in his sleep and draped an arm over my stomach, a gesture that would have looked protective to an outsider, but in the dark, with the glow of the streetlights filtering through the blinds, it felt heavy. It felt like a chain. I told myself it was just him venting. I told myself he didn't mean it maliciously, that he was just trying to impress his mother, to sound tougher than he was. I made excuses because the alternative, Admitting that my husband and his mother were actively conspiring to break my spirit was too terrifying to confront while I was 30 weeks pregnant. But the seed was planted. I started noticing other things: the way they would stop talking when I entered the room, the way Colleen would look at my belly with possession, but look at my face with disdain, the way Evan started pushing for me to sign a power of attorney for medical decisions, just in case something happens during delivery. "It is standard, Zara," he had said, sliding the paper across the kitchen counter along with my morning vitamins. "Mom says it is irresponsible not to have it. I didn't sign it. I told him I forgot. I told him I lost the paper." That was the first time I saw a flash of genuine anger in his eyes, quick and sharp, before he masked it with his usual passive-aggressive sigh. "You are so scattered lately," he muttered. By the time I stood on that porch with water running down my legs, I realized I hadn't been scattered. I had been slowly, methodically dismantled. They had stripped away my confidence, my boundaries, and my voice, piece by piece, so that when they finally locked the door, they thought I wouldn't have the strength to knock it down. They were right about the old Zara. But they hadn't met the mother I was about to become. The woman who paid the mortgage was done sleeping in the guest room of her own life. I work in logistics. My entire career is built on the principle that if you track the movement of a single screw through a supply chain, you can predict the health of the whole company. I look for bottlenecks. I look for leakages. I look for the tiny, seemingly insignificant errors that eventually cause a bridge to collapse. It is a skill set that makes me very good at my job at Marrowgate, but it is also the skill set that ultimately doomed my marriage. The financial bleeding did not start with a hemorrhage. It started with paper cuts. It was about 2 months before the lockout, right around the time I started feeling heavy and slow, that I sat down to reconcile our monthly expenses. I usually did a quick scan, trusting Evan's summaries, but that month I had a nesting instinct that extended to our bank balance. I opened the digital statement for our joint account, the one where my paycheck was deposited every 2 weeks, and I started scrolling. Most of it was standard: mortgage, utilities, groceries. But then I saw it, a withdrawal of $250 on a Tuesday. The recipient was listed as CL Consult. I frowned. I scrolled down. 2 weeks later, another withdrawal. $300 to Family Care Services. A week after that, $175 to Lane Assist. I highlighted the lines. In the span of 6 weeks, nearly $1,500 had drifted out of our account in increments small enough to avoid triggering a fraud alert, but frequent enough to dent our savings. I walked into the living room where Evan was playing a video game. I kept my voice casual, the way I would ask a vendor about a shipping delay. "Hey, what is CL Consult?" I asked. "And Family Care Services? I don't recognize these charges." Evan didn't even pause the game. His thumbs kept mashing the controller. "Oh, that is Mom." I stared at the back of his head. "Your mom is charging us consulting fees?" "No, babe, relax," he said, finally pausing the game and turning around with a patient, condescending smile. "She is picking up stuff for the baby. You know, vintage clothes, special organic bedding, deposits for that lactation consultant she found. She just uses her card and I reimburse her. The names on the transfer are just how her business account is set up. You know she has that old consulting LLC. Why doesn't she just give us the receipts?" I asked. "And why are the names so weird?" "She is doing us a favor, Zara," he said, his tone sharpening. "She is running around town while you are resting. Do you really want to audit her kindness? It is petty." There it was again. The accusation that I was ungrateful. I dropped it in the moment, but the logistics manager in my brain had already flagged the shipment as high risk. The next day, I went digging. I found a bag of baby clothes Colleen had brought over the previous weekend. She had made a big show of presenting them, claiming they were high-end boutique items. I checked the tags. They were from a discount chain. I looked up the brand online. The entire bundle cost maybe $40. I checked the bank statement again. On the day she brought the clothes, Evan had transferred $200 to CL Consult. The math was a lie. I didn't confront him again. Confrontation gave them data. It told them what I knew and allowed them to adjust their story. Instead, I went silent. I started a spreadsheet on my work laptop, password protected, completely separate from our home network. I called it Project Nursery. I logged every transaction. I cross-referenced dates. I realized that family care services withdrawals always happened on Fridays, usually right before Evan went out for drinks with the boys. Then came the mail. I have a service called Informed Delivery from the Postal Service. Every morning, I get an email with grayscale scans of the envelopes arriving in my mailbox that day. It is a way to track bills, but for me, it became a surveillance tool. On a Tuesday, 3 weeks before my due date, I saw a scan for an envelope from our bank. It was marked Urgent. Account Security Notice. I left work early. I wanted to get that letter before Evan did. When I pulled into the driveway, Colleen's car was already there. My stomach dropped. I walked into the house, trying to hide the breathless waddle that my pregnancy had forced upon me. Colleen was standing at the kitchen island, sorting through a pile of mail. "Oh, you are home early," she said, not looking up. She slid a stack of flyers into the recycling bin. "Just felt tired," I said, my eyes locking on her hands. "Is there any mail for me?" "Just junk," she said breezily. "Coupons, pizza ads. I already tossed the trash for you. You shouldn't be bending down to empty the bin anyway." I walked over to the counter. The pile remaining was just magazines and a catalog. The bank letter was gone. "I thought I was expecting a statement," I said, watching her face. Colleen didn't blink. She smiled, that tight, thin-lipped smile that never reached her eyes. "I didn't see anything, dear. Maybe tomorrow. You worry too much about paperwork. It is bad for the baby's blood pressure." I knew she had it. I could see the slight bulge in the side pocket of her oversized cardigan. She had intercepted my mail in my own house that evening. The pressure shifted from financial to legal. Evan came into the bedroom with a folder. He sat on the edge of the bed, putting on his serious, responsible face. "Babe, we need to talk about the delivery," he said. "Mom and I were talking, with your blood pressure being what it is, and the stress you have been under. We think we need to be prepared for worst-case scenarios." He pulled out a document, Durable Power of Attorney for Healthcare, and another one, Financial Power of Attorney. "If something happens to you during the birth," he said, his voice dropping to a whisper that was supposed to be comforting but felt like a threat. "I need to be able to make decisions instantly. We can't wait for a judge. Mom says her friend's daughter-in-law went into a coma and the husband couldn't even access the savings account to pay for the baby's care." I looked at the papers. They gave him total control. If I was incapacitated, or if they claimed I was incapacitated, he could sign checks, sell property, and make medical choices for me. "I am fine, Evan," I said, pushing the papers away. "I am not signing these. I am giving birth, not dying." "You are being stubborn." Colleen's voice came from the doorway. I hadn't even heard her come up the stairs. She stood there, arms crossed. "This is for the child. If you are unconscious, who takes care of the business? You are so selfish. Zara, always thinking about your control instead of the family's safety." "I will think about it," I lied. "Think fast," Evan said, snatching the papers back. "We don't have much time." Later that night, unable to sleep, I logged into our bank account again. I wanted to request a duplicate copy of the letter Colleen had stolen. I navigated to the document center on the website. I clicked on Statements and Notices. A pop-up appeared. "You are enrolled in paperless billing. All notices are sent to the email on file." I checked the profile settings. My email address was there. But then I looked closer at the Security Alerts and Secondary Contacts section. There was a second email listed. It wasn't mine. It wasn't Evan's usual Gmail. It was elmanage77@gmail.com. I stared at it. Evan Lane. I clicked on the history of changes. The email had been added 4 months ago. The preference for suppressed paper statements for specific sub-accounts had been toggled on the same day. My heart hammered against my ribs. They hadn't just stolen one letter. They had built a digital tunnel underneath my feet. They were diverting notifications, hiding transfers, and filtering the reality I was allowed to see. The letter Colleen stole today must have been one that slipped through their digital net, a physical failsafe from the bank that they hadn't anticipated. I realized then that the consulting fees were just the tip of the iceberg. They weren't just spending money, they were moving it. They were preparing for something, and as I lay there in the dark, feeling the baby kick against my ribs, I knew they weren't preparing for a new life. They were preparing for mine to end. At least, the version of it where I had any power. I didn't scream. I didn't wake Evan up. I quietly took my phone, turned off the Wi-Fi to ensure no traffic was logged on the router, switched to data, and changed the password to my personal email. Then I screenshot everything. If they wanted to play games with paper and ghosts, I was going to be the one who wrote the final report. Lying in the hospital bed, with the epidural finally numbing the lower half of my body, my mind was anything but numb. The physical pain had receded, leaving behind a cold, crystalline mental clarity. I stared at the sterile white ceiling tiles, and like a movie rewinding, the events of the last week played back in my head, but this time, I wasn't watching them through the haze of pregnancy fatigue. I was watching them with the eyes of a woman who had just been locked out of her own home. The pieces didn't just fit, they locked together with a terrifying snap. It started 7 days ago. We were eating dinner, takeout Thai food that Colleen had criticized for being too spicy, when she dropped her fork and looked at the front door with theatrical concern. "You know, Evan," she said, wiping her mouth. "I heard from the lady at the salon that there have been break-ins in this neighborhood, 2 streets over. They kicked the door right in." I looked up from my pad thai. "I haven't seen anything on the neighborhood app." "Oh, they don't report everything," Colleen said quickly. "But with the baby coming, do you really trust those old locks? Zara, they look flimsy." Evan nodded. He nodded too fast. It was a bobblehead nod, eager and rehearsed. "Mom is right, babe. We should upgrade. High-security deadbolts, just to be safe." I was 37 weeks pregnant. I was tired. I didn't have the energy to argue about door hardware. "Fine," I said. "I will call a locksmith next week." No, Evan said, reaching for my hand across the table. His palm was sweaty. "You focus on resting. I will handle it. In fact, I will schedule it for Tuesday when you have your ultrasound. That way the noise won't bother you." I thought he was being considerate. I was such a fool. Tuesday came. I went to the doctor, heard my son's heartbeat, and drove home feeling heavy but happy. When I put my key in the lock, it didn't turn smoothly. It felt gritty, sticky. I had to jiggle it, pull it back a fraction, and force it. When I finally stumbled inside, Colleen was standing in the foyer, arms crossed, watching me struggle. "The lock is stiff," I said, out of breath. "Did the guy finish?" "The lock is brand new and top of the line," she said, her voice smooth as oil. "You are just clumsy. Zara, it is the pregnancy brain. You are forgetting how to use a key." "I am not forgetting how to use a key," I snapped, frustration bubbling up. "It feels different." "It is all in your head," Evan called from the kitchen. "It works perfectly for us." Gaslighting is not always shouting. Sometimes it is just denying your reality until you stop trusting your own hands. I let it go. I blamed my swollen fingers. I blamed the heat. But the final piece of the trap arrived yesterday. I was sitting on the couch, timing mild Braxton Hicks contractions, when the front door opened. Colleen walked in, not with a grocery bag or a purse, but with a large, hard-shell suitcase on wheels. It bumped loudly over the threshold. I sat up. "Colleen, are you going somewhere?" "I am staying here," she announced, wheeling the case toward the guest room, my guest room. "For the baby, to help." I looked at Evan. He was standing behind her, avoiding my eyes. "We talked about this, Zara," he said. "No, we didn't," I said, my voice rising. "We discussed her coming after the baby was born. For a few days, not moving in beforehand. "You are so forgetful lately," Colleen sighed, rolling her eyes at Evan. "See? I told you she would forget. We agreed on this last Sunday." They looked at each other with a shared look of pity. Pity for the crazy hormonal woman who couldn't remember conversations that never happened. They were rewriting history in real time, and I was too exhausted to fight the script. Now, lying in the hospital bed, I realized that Suitcase wasn't for a visit. It was for an occupation. They knew I was close to labor. They changed the locks while I was out. They moved her in. They created a fortress, and then they waited for me to step outside. My phone buzzed on the bedside table. It was a message from Mrs. Gable, my neighbor, the one who had called 911. "Honey, I am so angry I can't sleep." The text read, "I checked my Ring camera history because I wanted to see exactly when the ambulance left. I found something from Tuesday. I think you need to see this. There was a video file attached." My heart hammered against the hospital gown. I pressed play. The video was the fisheye view from Mrs. Gable's porch across the street. It was grainy, but the audio was surprisingly clear in the quiet suburban afternoon. I saw a white van in my driveway. A man in a blue jumpsuit was standing by my front door. Evan was there, holding a clipboard, and Colleen was standing right next to the locksmith. "Okay, the main deadbolt is rekeyed," the locksmith said. "Do you want the secondary latch on the handle changed too? It is usually standard." Evan hesitated, but Colleen stepped forward, her voice cut through the air, sharp and commanding. "Yes," she said. "Change the handle lock too, and make sure it is one that locks automatically from the inside." "That can be risky if you step out without a key," the locksmith warned. "We need it secure," Colleen said. She lowered her voice, but the wind carried it right to Mrs. Gable's microphone. "My daughter-in-law. She has mental episodes. She gets violent. We need to make sure she can't get back in if she has an episode and we have to put her out for safety." I dropped the phone on the sheets. The air left my lungs. Mental episodes. Violent. That was the narrative. They weren't just locking me out to be cruel. They were building a case. They were setting a precedent. If I tried to break back in, I would just be the violent woman having an episode that the poor, concerned mother-in-law had warned the locksmith about. They had pre-explained my reaction to a stranger. They had weaponized the locks. I picked the phone back up, my hands trembling with a rage so pure it felt like rocket fuel. I watched the end of the video. I saw Evan sign the paper on the clipboard. "Thanks," Evan said to the man. "We just want to keep the baby safe." "Understood," the locksmith said. I saved the video. I backed it up to the cloud. I emailed it to my work address. Evan had signed the work order, but looking closely at the video, I saw something else. The clipboard the locksmith was holding. It was a standard invoice, and at the bottom were the homeowner signs. Evan had scribbled his name, but the house was in my name, solely. Evan didn't have the legal authority to authorize a security change on the property structure without my consent. He had misrepresented himself as the owner to a contractor. Fraud. It was a small legal hook, maybe, but I was going to hang him on it. I looked at the door of my hospital room. It was closed. For the first time in hours, I felt safe, because I knew exactly who was on the other side of it. Nurses and security guards who followed a list I controlled. "You want to talk about episodes, Colleen?" I whispered to the empty room. "I will show you an episode, but this one is going to be televised in court." I dialed the number for the only person I trusted to bring me the rest of the ammunition I needed. "Megan," I said when she picked up, "I need you to go to the bank, and then I need you to find a lawyer who likes to eat men like Evan for breakfast." The delivery room at St. Briar Medical Center was quiet, save for the soft, rhythmic beeping of the monitors and the shallow breathing of the tiny human resting on my chest. I named him Leo. He was 6 pounds, 4 ounces of pure innocence, smelling of vernix and the sterile soap of the hospital. He was perfect, and he was the only male in the room, because his father was nowhere to be found. I checked my phone. It had been 4 hours since I was wheeled into triage. There was one unread message from Evan. Mom is completely exhausted because of your stunt. Her migraine is back. We are going to stay home until you are ready to apologize and act like a rational person. Let us know when you are discharged. I read the text twice. I didn't feel the sting of rejection I expected. Instead, I felt the cold, hard click of a latch securing into place. He wasn't coming. He was choosing to nurse his mother's fake migraine over meeting his firstborn son. That decision was his final mistake. I pressed the call button attached to the bed rail. A nurse appeared within seconds. A kind-faced woman named Sarah, who had held my hand while I pushed because my husband wasn't there to do it. "Everything okay, honey? Do you need pain meds?" "I need security," I said, my voice raspy but steady. "I need to update my visitation list immediately." Sarah blinked, surprised by the shift in my tone. "Okay, who do you want to add?" "I want to remove everyone," I said. "No one is allowed in this room except for the medical staff and Megan Holt. Specifically, I need to ban Evan Lane and Colleen Lane. If they show up, I want them removed from the premises. They are not to come near me or my son." Sarah hesitated for a fraction of a second. Then she saw the look in my eyes. The look of a wounded animal that had decided to stop running and start biting. "I will put the flag in the system right now. Security will be notified. You are safe here." As soon as she left, I shifted Leo to my left arm, wincing as the movement pulled at my stitches. I picked up my phone with my right hand. The time for crying was over. It was time for a digital purge. I started with the email. The email was the skeleton key to my entire life. Bank resets, utility bills, cloud access. I logged in and navigated to the security settings. I changed the password to a random string of 18 characters that I memorized on the spot. Then, I went to the Logged In Devices tab. There they were, Evan's iPhone 14, Colleen's iPad. They had access. They had been watching. I hit Sign Out all other web sessions. I watched the list vanish. I imagined the error message popping up on their screens at home. The sudden severance of their lifeline to my privacy, it gave me a grim sense of satisfaction. Next, I activated two-factor authentication, linking it to an authenticator app, not my phone number, just in case they tried to clone my SIM card. I was closing the blast doors, then, the bank. I dialed the fraud department of our bank, putting the phone on speaker so I could keep holding Leo. "This is Zara Cruz," I told the representative. "I am the primary account holder on the checking account ending in 4492. I have reason to believe my account security has been compromised by a third party with access to my credentials. I need to freeze all outgoing wire transfers and transactions over $100 immediately." "We can certainly place a temporary hold." "Mrs. Cruz," the agent said, "do you want to cancel the debit cards as well?" "Yes," I said. "Cancel mine and cancel the secondary card issued to Evan Lane. Issue new ones, but do not mail them to the address on file. I will pick them up at the branch." "Understood. Is there anything else?" "Yes. I want to note for the record that any transfer made in the last 48 hours was unauthorized. I will be filing a formal dispute once I have the police report." I hung up. The money was now trapped. They could look at the balance, but they couldn't touch it. They were going to wake up tomorrow trying to buy breakfast and find out their credit was as empty as their souls. My next call was to the homeowners association of my neighborhood. This was a crucial tactical step. "Hi, this is Zara Cruz at 412 Oakwood Lane," I said. "I am currently in the hospital, but I need to register a security concern. I am the sole owner of the property. I need to confirm that no work orders or access requests are approved unless they come from this phone number. We actually had a request to update the gate code for a guest named Colleen Lane yesterday." The manager said. "Reject it," I ordered. "Colleen Lane does not have residency rights, and I need you to recommend the locksmith the association uses for emergency rekeying. I want him booked to meet me at my front door the exact hour I am discharged." "I will have Mr. Henderson call you to schedule," she said. I hung up just as the door to my room flew open. I flinched, pulling Leo tighter. But it was just Megan. She looked like she had run a marathon, her hair messy and a large tote bag slung over her shoulder. I got here as fast as I could, she gasped. Rushing to the bedside, she looked at Leo and her eyes welled up. Oh, Zara, he is beautiful, and I hate your husband so much I might vomit. Did you go to the bank? I asked, cutting through the sentiment. Megan nodded, wiping her eyes. I went straight to the safety deposit box like you asked. Thank God you added me as a deputy signer last year. She pulled a thick, sealed envelope out of her bag. The deed to the house, the original title, and your passport. I let out a breath I didn't know I had been holding. Months ago, when Colleen had started making jokes about how families should pool assets, I had felt a prickle of danger. I had taken the original deed out of the filing cabinet at home and locked it away in the bank vault. At the time, I thought I was being paranoid. Now, I knew I had been prescient. Hold this, I said, handing the envelope back to her. Do not let it leave your sight. If Evan tries to claim he has ownership, this piece of paper is the only thing that proves he is lying. He is not getting this house, Megan said fiercely. I will eat the paper before I let him touch it. I looked down at my phone again. The notification badge for my Informed Delivery app had a red dot. The mail for today had just been scanned at the distribution center. I opened the app, expecting to see bills or maybe a congratulations card. Instead, I saw a scan of a standard white envelope from the United States Postal Service. It was a confirmation of change of address. I zoomed in on the image. Move to 889 Willow Creek Drive. That was Colleen's address. Name, Zara Cruz, and family. The blood roared in my ears. They weren't just kicking me out. They were redirecting my entire identity to her house. They wanted my bank statements, my legal notices, my medical bills, everything, to go straight to Colleen. It was identity theft wrapped in a family crisis. Megan, I said, my voice cold as ice. Look at this. I showed her the screen. They put in a forwarding order, Megan whispered, horrified. They are trying to steal your mail. No, I said, taking a screenshot and saving it to my growing folder of evidence. They are trying to become me. Evan didn't want a divorce. He wanted to erase me and replace me with his mother. I looked down at Leo, sleeping peacefully amidst the chaos. I touched his tiny hand. They made a miscalculation. Megan, I said. They thought they were cutting off my communications, but what they actually did was send me federal evidence of mail fraud. I sat up straighter in the bed, the pain in my body secondary to the adrenaline flooding my veins. Pass me the water, I told Megan. I have to call the Postmaster General, and then I am going to call a divorce lawyer. The silence in my hospital room was a heavy, protective blanket, broken only by the angry buzzing of my phone on the bedside table. It vibrated against the plastic surface like a trapped insect. I didn't silence it. I didn't turn it off. I let it buzz. Because every vibration was a data point, and every missed call was evidence of their escalating desperation. Evan had called 23 times in the last hour. I watched the screen light up again. Husband. I let it ring until it went to voicemail. Then again. When the calls finally stopped, the text messages began to arrive like mortar shells. First message, 10:15 a.m. Pick up the phone. Zara. This is ridiculous. Mom is in the car crying because you are keeping her grandson from her. Second message, 10:18 a.m. You are acting crazy. This is exactly what we were worried about. Postpartum psychosis is real. Zara, let us in so we can help you. Third message, 10:30 a.m. If you don't authorize security to let us up in the next 5 minutes, you are going to regret it. You are dead to me if you keep my mother away from this baby. I took a screenshot of the threat. You are dead to me. It was emotional. Yes. But in family court, it paints a picture of hostility that judges do not like. Then came the message from Colleen. It was a long block of text, devoid of punctuation, a stream of consciousness designed to guilt and terrify. Colleen Lane, 10:45 a.m. I cannot believe you are doing this to the family after all we have done for you, Zara. You are clearly not in your right mind, pushing away the only support system you have. You cannot raise this child alone. You don't even know how to change a diaper without me watching. You are fighting a battle you will lose because family always wins. Stop this nonsense and tell the nurse to let us up." I didn't reply. My silence was the wall they were crashing against. Megan sat in the chair next to me, her laptop open. She was monitoring social media. "They are taking it public," Megan said, turning the screen toward me. On Facebook, Colleen had posted a status update 5 minutes ago. It was already gathering likes and sympathetic emojis from her church group and extended family. "Please pray for my son Evan. His wife has had a mental break after the birth and is refusing to let the father or the grandmother see the baby. She has kidnapped our grandson inside the hospital. We are heartbroken and just want to make sure the baby is safe from her manic episode." Comments are rolling in, Megan noted dryly. Evan's aunt says, "Call the police." His cousin says, "Women like that shouldn't be mothers." "Let them talk," I said, adjusting the ice pack on my chest. "Let them dig the hole deeper. Every lie they tell is one more thing I can disprove later." Then, the tone of the texts changed. The aggression shifted from emotional to transactional. Evan Lane, 11:15 a.m. "Did you touch the accounts?" Evan Lane, 11:17 a.m. "I just tried to buy coffee and gas. The card was declined. It says report lost or stolen." Evan Lane, 11:20 a.m. "You stole my money? Are you serious? That is theft. Zara, you can't lock me out of my own money. Undo it right now, or I'm calling the cops." I actually laughed. It was a dry, raspy sound. "He thinks it is his money," I whispered to Leo. "He thinks the allowance I gave him is his right. He is coming here," Megan said, looking at the tracking on the messages. "He is not just texting. He is furious." 20 minutes later, the phone in my room rang. It was the nurse's station. "Mrs. Cruz?" the nurse said. "There are 2 individuals in the lobby demanding to see you, an Evan Lane and a Colleen Lane. They are quite agitated. I do not wish to see them," I said clearly. "They are not on the list. Please ask security to handle it." "Understood. Security is already there." Megan grabbed her phone. "I am going down," she said. "I need to see this." "Be careful," I warned. "I am not going to interfere," Megan said, a wicked glint in her eye. "I am just going to be a concerned bystander with a very high-definition camera," she returned 15 minutes later, breathless and triumphant. "You are going to love this," she said, airdropping a video file to my phone. I played the video. It was shot from a distance, likely from behind a pillar in the hospital atrium. In the center of the frame, Colleen was screaming. She wasn't the composed, passive-aggressive Southern belle anymore. She was a banshee. "That bitch stole my grandson," Colleen shrieked, pointing a finger at a large security guard. "She is unstable. She locked us out of our own house. You have to let us up. She might hurt the baby." Evan was standing next to her, looking red-faced and impotent. He was trying to argue with another guard, waving his declined debit card in the air. "She froze my assets. This is financial abuse. I am the father." The guard remained calm. "Sir, ma'am, if you do not lower your voices and leave the premises, we will have you arrested for trespassing and disorderly conduct. The patient has explicitly denied you entry." "She is not the patient," Colleen yelled. "She is a vessel. The baby belongs to the family. The baby belongs to the family." "Got it," I said, pausing the video on Colleen's twisted, angry face. "That is the clip. That is the one the judge sees." Megan sat down and opened a folder on her laptop. "I have been busy while you were resting. I called the non-emergency line and got the incident number for your 911 call yesterday. I tracked down the EMTs who transported you. One of them, a guy named Marcus, remembers specifically that the house was dark and no one came out. He is willing to give a statement." "And the neighbor?" I asked. "Mrs. Gable sent over the full ring history," Megan said, "including a clip from this morning where Evan is banging on the front door and kicking the planter because his key still doesn't work. It proves he isn't living there currently, which supports your claim of separation." I felt a strange sense of calm, They were loud, messy, and reactive. I was silent, precise, and prepared. They were playing checkers. I was playing three-dimensional chess. My phone pinged with an email notification. It was from Evan. Subject: "Let's de-escalate. Please read." I opened it. The body of the email was surprisingly conciliatory, a stark contrast to the screaming man in the video from 20 minutes ago. "Zara, look, things got heated. I am sorry. Mom is sorry. We are just worried. We know you are overwhelmed. We don't want to fight in court. We just want to help you with Leo. I know you are tired. Mom wants to take the night shift so you can sleep when you get home. Please, just sign the attached agreement so the hospital knows we are on the same team and allows us back up. It is just a standard consent form for family care." Attached was a PDF. Family Support Agreement V2. PDF. I almost deleted it, but the investigator in me forced me to open it. It looked official. It had legal formatting. It referenced postpartum support and familial assistance. But I scrolled down to the fine print on page 3. Buried in a paragraph about medical decision-making in the event of maternal fatigue, there was a clause. The signatory hereby grants temporary guardianship and primary physical custody to the paternal grandmother, Colleen Lane, for a period of not less than 6 months to ensure the welfare of the infant, citing maternal incapacity due to postpartum distress. I froze. "Megan," I said, my voice dropping to a whisper. "Look at this." Megan leaned in. Reading the clause I pointed to, her jaw dropped. "That is not a support agreement," she hissed. "That is a custody transfer." "He tried to trick me," I said, the realization washing over me like ice water. "He thought I would be too tired to read it. He thought I would just see support and sign it to make the fighting stop." "They aren't just trying to smear you," Megan said. "They are trying to legally steal the baby before you even leave the building." I closed the laptop. The last shred of guilt I felt about freezing the bank account evaporated. "He wants a signature," I said, looking at the door. "I will give him a signature, but it will be on a restraining order." I picked up my phone and dialed the number for Dana Kessler, the most aggressive family law attorney in Richmond. "Dana," I said when she answered. "It is Zara. I am ready to push the button, and I have the smoking gun." Dana Kessler walked into my hospital room looking like she had already won the argument before it even started. She was a petite woman in a razor-sharp navy blazer, but her presence filled the room. Megan had found her reviews online, and the consensus was that Dana did not litigate. She annihilated. "Let me see the document he sent you," Dana said, skipping the pleasantries. She didn't ask about the baby or my recovery. She was here for the war. I handed her my phone with the PDF of the family support agreement open. Dana adjusted her glasses, read for fewer than 10 seconds, and let out a dry, humorless laugh. "This is cute," she said. "He tried to slip a voluntary relinquishment of custody into a paragraph about diaper changes. If you had signed this, we would have had to fight for 2 years just to get you unsupervised visits. This isn't a support agreement, Mrs. Cruz. This is a confession of intent to alienate." She pulled a legal pad from her briefcase and uncapped a pen. "We are going on the offense. I am filing an emergency ex parte motion this afternoon. We are not asking the judge for permission. We are telling the judge what is necessary for the safety of the child." "What are we asking for?" I asked, shifting Leo in my arms. 3 things, Dana listed, ticking them off on her fingers. 1. Temporary sole physical and legal custody of Leo based on the father's attempt to defraud you of rights while you were medically incapacitated. 2. A temporary restraining order against Colleen Lane for the scene she caused in the lobby and the harassment on social media. And 3, and this is the big one, exclusive possession of the marital residence. Exclusive possession? "It means Evan cannot go home," Dana said calmly, "even though his name might be on the mail. The deed is in your name, and his actions, locking you out during a medical emergency, constitute a form of constructive eviction and domestic abuse. We are flipping the script. The judge will order him to vacate immediately. If he steps foot on the driveway, he goes to jail. I felt a knot loosen in my chest. Do it. I need your signature on these affidavits, she said, spreading papers out on the sliding hospital table. And I need that video from your neighbor, and the recording of the 911 call. Everything goes into the exhibit binder. As Dana worked on the filing, I turned my attention to the other fronts of this battle. I was not just fighting a legal case, I was fighting a corporate and financial one. I picked up the phone and dialed the HR department at Marrowgate Logistics. I knew the director, a no-nonsense woman named Sarah, fairly well. Sarah, this is Zara Cruz, I said. I am currently on maternity leave, but I need to flag a security concern regarding my personal safety. Oh my God. Zara, are you okay? I am fine, but I'm going through a high-conflict separation. My husband, Evan Lane, has made threats to come to the office and, quote, make a scene to destroy my reputation. I need to ensure he is removed from my emergency contact list immediately and that security is aware he is not permitted on the premises. Consider it done, Sarah said, her voice shifting to professional steel. I will distribute his photo to the front desk. If he shows up, we will call the police for trespassing. And Zara, take all the time you need. Thank you. I hung up and opened my insurance app. For years, Evan had been the primary beneficiary on my life insurance policy. If I died, he would get $500,000, enough to live comfortably with his mother for a decade. I deleted him. I typed in Leo Cruz, with Megan Holt listed as the trustee until he turned 25. Then I went to the retirement accounts. 401k, Roth IRA, beneficiary updated, Evan was gone. In the span of 5 minutes, I had ensured that even if the stress of this killed me, he wouldn't see a single dime of my legacy. Next, I called the 3 major credit bureaus, Equifax, Experian, TransUnion. I want to place a total freeze on my credit report. I told the automated systems, no new accounts, no inquiries. Evan had my social security number. He had my birth date. I knew his financial situation was desperate. He had been relying on my income to fund his lifestyle and his mother's consulting fees. Cut off from the cash flow, he would panic. He would try to open credit cards in my name. I was locking the vault before he could even reach for the handle. Dana looked up from her writing. I am sending a cease and desist letter to Colleen right now. I am citing the Facebook posts as defamation and the hospital incident as harassment. I am also putting her on notice for tortious interference in your marriage. It is a shot across the bow to let her know that if she keeps talking, I will sue her for every vintage brooch she owns. Good, I said. She cares about her image more than anything. Now, Dana said, tapping her pen on the table. We need to talk about the money. You mentioned suspicious transfers. I downloaded the transaction history before I locked him out of the online banking. I said, I have it here. I opened the spreadsheet on my laptop. I had highlighted the transfers to CL Consult and Family Care. I want to know where this money went, I said. It wasn't a business. I checked the state registry. There is no LLC registered under those names in Virginia. So where did it go? Dana asked. I dug into the routing numbers, I said. The bank app shows the last 4 digits of the receiving account and the routing number of the institution. It is a credit union in North Carolina. I pulled up a second window. I called that credit union pretending to be a vendor trying to verify a payment. I gave them the account number. They wouldn't give me the balance, obviously, but they confirmed the name on the account to ensure the wire wouldn't bounce. I turned the screen toward Dana. The account wasn't a business account. It was a joint personal checking account. The names listed were Colleen Lane and Evan Lane. Dana's eyebrows shot up. He wasn't paying her for services, I said, my voice trembling with cold rage. He was funneling our marital assets, my salary, into a secret account he shares with his mother. They have been siphoning money for months, maybe years. That is dissipation of marital assets, Dana said, a shark-like grin spreading across her face. And since it is a joint account with her, we can subpoena her records too. We can drag her into the divorce proceedings as a third-party defendant. I looked at the total sum at the bottom of my spreadsheet. $22,000 in the last 8 months alone. That was the nursery money. That was the college fund money. They didn't just lock me out of the house, I realized aloud. They were building an escape pod. He was funding his life with her using my paycheck, waiting for the right moment to either leave me or break me so completely that I wouldn't notice. Well, Dana said, snapping her briefcase shut. He just made a very expensive mistake. I am going to ask the judge to freeze that account too, and I am going to ask for a forensic accounting of every penny. She stood up. I have to get to the courthouse before the clerk closes. You stay here, hug that baby, and answer the phone only if it is me. Dana, I asked as she reached the door. Yes? Destroy them, I said. Dana winked. That is what I bill for. I leaned back against the pillows. The pain from the birth was still there, a dull ache in my core, but it was overshadowed by a new feeling. For the first time in months, I wasn't the victim. I was the CEO of my own defense, and I had just authorized a hostile takeover of their entire scheme. Silence is a vacuum. If you create enough of it, people will rush to fill it with noise, and in their haste, they will say things they can never take back. I waited until exactly 10 o'clock in the morning, 2 days after the birth, to send the message. I had let them stew in their own panic for 48 hours. They had seen their debit cards declined. They had felt the humiliation of being turned away by hospital security. They were desperate for a resolution, and desperation makes people sloppy. I typed the text to Evan carefully. I stripped away the anger, the accusation, and the legal threats. I needed to sound like the woman they thought I was. Broken, hormonal, and submissive. I am tired of fighting. I just want what is best for Leo. Can we meet? I can't do this alone anymore. The response came in 12 seconds. Finally, Starbucks on 4th Avenue, noon, don't be late. I showed the phone to Dana. She was sitting in the visitor chair of my hospital room, her laptop open, looking like a shark smelling blood in the water. Perfect, she said. He thinks you are surrendering. He is going to walk into that coffee shop with his guard down and his ego up. Is the recording app set up on your phone? I asked. Verified, Dana said. And that Starbucks has high-definition security cameras covering the seating area. I already have a subpoena drafted to pull the footage if things get physical. But they won't. They are cowards. I wasn't discharged yet, but I had a 2-hour pass. I put on regular clothes, loose sweatpants and a nursing top, hiding the postpartum diaper and the mesh underwear that made me feel vulnerable. But when I looked in the mirror, I didn't see a victim. I saw a hunter in camouflage. I arrived at the coffee shop at 11:45. Dana sat at a table 2 rows behind me, close enough to hear, far enough to look like a stranger working on her laptop. I sat directly under the camera dome in the corner. I ordered a decaf tea I had no intention of drinking. At 12 on the dot, the door opened. Evan walked in first. He looked disheveled, but he carried himself with a swagger that made my stomach turn. He was wearing his business polo, the one he wore when he was trying to close a deal. Behind him was Colleen. She was wearing sunglasses indoors and clutching her purse like it contained the crown jewels. They spotted me and marched over. They didn't buy coffee. They didn't ask how I was. They just pulled out chairs and sat down, boxing me in. Well, Evan said, leaning back and crossing his arms, I'm glad you finally came to your senses. Zara, Mama's been sick with worry. You really scared us with that little stunt at the hospital. Stunt? I repeated softly, keeping my eyes on the table. Blocking the family, Colleen hissed, leaning in, calling security on the grandmother. It was cruel. Zara, but we are willing to forgive you. We know hormones make you irrational. I just want to go home, I said, my voice trembling slightly. It was the best performance of my life. I want to take Leo home. That is what we want too, Evan said, his tone shifting to that condescending manager voice he used when he was explaining finances to me. But we need to set some ground rules. If you are coming back to the house, things are going to be different. Mom is going to handle the finances from now on. You clearly can't handle the stress. And the locks? I asked. Why did you change the locks, Evan? Safety, he said quickly. I told you. But it is my house, I said. I bought it. My name is on the deed. Evan laughed. It was a sharp, barking sound. He looked at Colleen, sharing a private joke. Babe, come on, he scoffed. We are married. What is yours is mine. And honestly, that house is basically Mom's at this point. She runs it. She takes care of it. You just sleep there. I saw Dana stiffen in my peripheral vision. She was typing furiously. But the paperwork, I pressed, keeping my voice naive. The mortgage is in my name. The title is in my name. You don't own it. Evan? Evan slammed his hand on the table. A few people looked over. Stop with the paperwork, he snapped. It doesn't matter whose name is on a piece of paper in some city archive. It is a family asset. I am the man of the house. I decide who lives there and who holds the keys. Mom has been saying for months that we should just put it in her name for tax reasons anyway. We were going to handle that, Colleen interrupted, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. We didn't want to stress you out, Zara. We just needed you out of the house for the birth so we could organize things. You were so difficult the last few weeks. We couldn't have you waddling around asking questions while we were trying to set up the future. I looked up. The mask slipped. So the lockout was planned? You wanted me out so you could organize? We did it for the baby, Colleen said, defensive now. To make sure the environment was controlled, you were getting hysterical. We needed you gone for a few days so Evan could take charge. Take charge of what? I asked. Of the assets, Evan said, his frustration boiling over. God, you are dense. We needed to consolidate everything, the accounts, the house. We can't have you hoarding everything just because you earn the paycheck. That was it. The admission. They admitted the lockout was a strategic move to seize control of assets. I reached into my bag. I didn't pull out a tissue. I pulled out the file folder Megan had given me. I slid a single piece of paper across the table. It was a photocopy of the warranty deed, time-stamped from 5 years ago. This is the deed, I said, my voice dropping the tremble, becoming cold and hard as steel. Read line 4. Grantee, Zara Cruz, a single woman. Evan stared at the paper. His face turned a shade of mottled red. This is old, he muttered. It is current, I said. I checked the registrar's office this morning. It is still just me. You have no rights to that property. Evan, you are a guest, and as of yesterday, your guest privileges have been revoked. Evan looked up, his eyes wide with a mixture of panic and rage. He realized the submissive wife act was a trap. He realized he had just confessed to an illegal eviction on camera. You think this piece of paper protects you? He sneered, leaning over the table, his face inches from mine. I could have changed this. I was going to change this. While you were lying in that hospital bed, I was going to fix the deed. I could have signed it over to Mom, and you wouldn't have known until you got home. The coffee shop went silent around us. He had said it. He had vocalized the intent to commit deed fraud. You were going to forge my signature? I asked, clear and loud. I am your husband, he shouted. I can sign for you. I have the power of attorney. No, I said calmly. You don't. I never signed those papers. Evan, remember? Evan froze. His mouth opened, but no sound came out. He looked at Colleen. She looked pale, her sunglasses sliding down her nose. At that moment, Dana stood up. She walked over to our table, her heels clicking on the tile floor like the gavel of a judge. Good afternoon, she said pleasantly. I am Dana Kessler, Zara's attorney. I believe you have just admitted to conspiracy to commit real estate fraud and financial identity theft in a public setting. Evan scrambled back in his chair. Who is this? Zara, what the hell is this? This is the end, I said. Dana placed her phone on the table. I have the recording, Mr. Lane, and I have a witness. You just stated you intended to transfer the property without the owner's consent while she was hospitalized. That is a felony. Evan stood up, looking for an exit. You are twisting my words. I was just talking. Sit down, Dana ordered, or I call the police right now and play them this tape. He sat. My phone buzzed. It was Megan. She had been monitoring the Informed Delivery account again, digging through the archives of the last month. Zara, look at the image I just sent you. This is the smoking gun. I opened the image. It was a scan of a piece of mail from 3 weeks ago. Mail I never received because Colleen had intercepted it. The envelope was from Richmond Mobile Notary Services, and below that, another envelope from a website called LegalZoom, Quitclaim Deed Preparation. I turned the phone around so they could see the screen. Is this what you were waiting for, Evan? I asked. You ordered a quitclaim deed kit, and you hired a mobile notary. Let me guess, you were going to bring the notary to the house while I was in the hospital and have someone pretend to be me? Or were you just going to forge it and pay the notary off? Colleen gasped. She grabbed Evan's arm. Let's go. We are leaving. You can leave, I said. But you can't go home. The locks are being changed again right now. My locks. And if you step on the property, the police have a standing order to arrest you. Evan looked at me, and for the first time, I saw the man behind the mask. He wasn't a leader. He wasn't a protector. He was a small, greedy child who had been caught with his hand in the jar. You are destroying this family, he whispered. No, Evan, I said, standing up and picking up my purse. I am just evicting the squatters. I turned to Dana. I am ready to go back to my son now. We walked out of the coffee shop, leaving them sitting at the table, staring at the empty cups and the wreckage of their scheme. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. I knew exactly what they looked like. Defeated. I did not go home when the automatic doors of St. Briar Medical Center slid open. I was not naive enough to walk straight back into the lion's den with a 3-day-old infant in my arms, even if I legally owned the den. Instead, I took an Uber to a residence inn 5 miles away, a place Megan had booked under her name so no credit card trail would lead Evan to me. I sat in the generic beige armchair of the hotel room, feeding Leo, while my phone became the command center for the reclamation of my property. I had coordinated with the Homeowners Association's preferred locksmith, Mr. Henderson, to meet Megan at the house at 2 in the afternoon. I had given Megan a notarized letter authorizing her to act on my behalf, along with the original deed. I watched it all unfold through the Ring camera app on my phone. At 2:15, Mr. Henderson finished drilling out the high-security locks Evan had installed. He replaced them with smart locks that I could control from my phone. He handed the physical backup keys to Megan, who put them directly into her purse. At 5:30, Evan's car pulled into the driveway. He got out, looking exhausted but smug. He was probably expecting to find me inside, cowed and apologetic, ready to sign his fraudulent support agreement. He walked up to the door, took out his key, and slid it into the lock. It didn't fit. He frowned, pulling it out and looking at it. He tried again, jamming it harder. Then he looked at the handle. He realized it was different. "What the hell?" he muttered. He rang the doorbell. I didn't answer. He pounded on the wood. "Zara, open the door. I know you are in there." He pulled out his phone and called me. I watched it ring on the table next to me and let it go to voicemail. Then, he did exactly what I hoped he would do. He called the police. I listened to the audio from the doorbell camera. "Yes, I need an officer at 412 Oakwood Lane. My wife has illegally locked me out of my own home. I have a newborn baby inside. I am worried about their safety." He was playing the concerned father card. He was trying to use the police as his personal battering ram. 2 patrol cars arrived 20 minutes later. 2 officers approached him. One was a tall man with a skeptical expression. The other was a younger woman. "This is my house," Evan said, gesturing wildly at the door. "She changed the locks while I was at work. She is having a mental breakdown. Do you have identification?" The officer asked. Evan handed over his license. The officer looked at it, then radioed dispatch. Dispatch, can you run the property records for 412 Oakwood Lane? I held my breath in the hotel room. This was the moment. Owner of record is Zara Cruz, the dispatch voice crackled back, loud enough for the camera to pick up. Sole owner, no other names on the title. The officer handed the license back to Evan. Sir, the house is not in your name. We are married, Evan shouted. It is marital property. That is a civil matter for divorce court, the officer said calmly. But right now, the owner has the right to secure the property. If you aren't on the deed and you don't have a key, we cannot force entry for you. She has my son in there. Actually, I said, speaking through the doorbell speaker. My voice boomed out onto the porch, making Evan jump. I am not there. Officers, I am at a secure location because this man locked me out of my house while I was in active labor 3 days ago. My lawyer has already filed for a restraining order. Evan spun around, staring at the camera lens with pure hatred. You are lying, he screamed at the doorbell. Check the police report from 3 days ago. I told the officer through the speaker. You will see a call from this address. An ambulance had to pick me up from the porch because he wouldn't open the door. The female officer checked her computer. She nodded to her partner. Confirmed. Medical emergency call. Lockout reported. Sir, the male officer said, stepping between Evan and the door. You need to leave the property. If the homeowner wants you gone, and you are not on the title, you are trespassing. I live here, Evan shrieked. Not tonight you don't, the officer said. Then, the circus arrived. Colleen's sedan screeched up to the curb. She didn't even park properly. She just abandoned the vehicle and ran across the lawn. What are you doing to my son? She yelled. That is his house. She stole it. Mrs. Gable, my neighbor, was already out on her porch. I could see her holding up her phone, filming everything. Ma'am, step back, the officer warned Colleen. You don't understand, Colleen wailed, grabbing Evan's arm. She is unstable. She is dangerous. You have to break the door down. Ma'am, if you do not lower your voice, I will cite you for disorderly conduct, the officer said, his hand resting near his belt. This is a warning. Come on, Mom, Evan said, his face pale. He knew he had lost. He knew the neighbors were watching. He knew the police weren't buying the narrative. Let's go. We will call the lawyer. I watched them retreat. They looked small. They looked pathetic. But the war wasn't over. It was just moving to a different battlefield. The next morning, Dana called me. He made his move, she said. He filed an emergency ex parte motion at 8 this morning. He is claiming you are suffering from severe postpartum psychosis. He claims you are a danger to yourself and the child. He is asking for immediate custody and for you to be committed for evaluation. He is desperate, I said. He is, Dana agreed. But he made a fatal error. He swore in his affidavit that you have a history of hallucinations and that the lockout 3 days ago never happened. He claims you hallucinated the locked door and refused to come inside. I felt a cold smile spread across my face. He lied to the court. Perjury, Dana corrected. And we can prove it. I have the EMT report. I have the statement from the paramedic. Marcus, who explicitly wrote, patient found on porch, door locked, individuals inside refused entry. We have the ring footage from Mrs. Gable. We have the locksmith invoice Evan signed. When is the hearing? Tomorrow at 10. The judge set it fast because of the danger allegations. Get your suit ready. Zara, we are going to court. I spent the rest of the day organizing. I created a timeline. Tuesday, lock change. Wednesday, lockout. Thursday, theft of funds. Every accusation they made was a projection of their own actions. That evening, Megan came to the hotel room with takeout. She looked grim. I found something else, she said, opening her laptop. I was digging into that joint account you found, the one Evan shares with Colleen. The money laundering account? Yeah, I looked at the withdrawals, last week, 2 days before you went into labor. There was a transfer of $4,000. It went to a property management company called Riverview Estates. He rented an apartment? I asked. For him and Colleen? That is what I thought at first, Megan said. But I called Riverview. I pretended to be from the bank verifying a check. I asked for the names on the lease. Megan took a deep breath. It is Evan Lane, she said, and Jessica Vane. I stared at her. Jessica? The 24-year-old intern at his office? The one he said was just a kid he was mentoring? The same one, Megan said. And the lease starts on the 1st of next month. The room seemed to tilt. The realization hit me with the force of a physical blow. He wasn't just locking me out to control me, I whispered. He was locking me out to buy time. What do you mean? The suitcase, I said, my mind racing back to the moment Colleen rolled her luggage into my house. She brought a huge suitcase, but she wasn't moving in to take care of the baby. She was moving in to help him pack. I stood up and paced the small hotel room. They knew I was going into labor. They knew I would be in the hospital for at least 2 days, maybe 3. That was their window. They were going to use those 3 days to loot the house. They were going to take the furniture, the electronics, the valuables. They were going to clear out the accounts and disappear into this new apartment with Jessica before I even got discharged. But you came back too early, Megan said. Or rather, you started fighting back too fast? The lockout wasn't a punishment, I said. The horror of it settling into my bones. It was a heist. They were going to leave me with an empty house and a newborn baby, while he started his new life with my money and his mistress. I looked at Leo, sleeping soundly in the portable bassinet. He never wanted custody, I said. He just wanted the cash. The custody battle is just a smokescreen to force me to negotiate a financial settlement. I picked up my phone and dialed Dana. Add a name to the witness list, I told her. Jessica Vane, and subpoena the lease agreement for Riverview Estates. I want the judge to see exactly where my husband intended to sleep while claiming he wanted to come home to his family. You got it, Dana said. I hung up. The fear was gone. The sadness was gone. There was only the cold, sharp precision of a woman who had seen the enemy's playbook and knew exactly how to burn it to the ground. The courtroom smelled of floor wax and stale coffee, a scent that I will forever associate with the sound of my husband's life falling apart. I sat at the plaintiff's table next to Dana, my hands folded calmly on the polished wood. Across the aisle, Evan was putting on the performance of a lifetime. He was wearing a suit I had bought him for our 2nd anniversary, and he was dabbing at dry eyes with a handkerchief. Colleen sat behind him, clutching a rosary beads, looking like a martyr in a polyester blouse. Judge Sullivan, a stern woman with reading glasses perched on the end of her nose, looked over the file. Mr. Lane, she said, you are petitioning for emergency custody and a psychiatric hold on your wife based on claims of instability and endangerment. You may proceed. Evan stood up. His voice shook with a practiced tremor. Your Honor, I love my wife, but since the birth, she has not been herself. She is paranoid. She is vindictive. She locked me out of our family home. She froze our bank accounts so I couldn't even buy diapers for my son. She is keeping me from my child out of spite. I am just trying to protect my boy from a woman who has clearly lost her grip on reality. He sat down, looking at Colleen for approval. She gave him a tragic nod. Dana didn't stand up immediately. She let his words hang in the air for a moment, letting the silence stretch until it was uncomfortable. Then, she stood. Your Honor, Dana said. Mr. Lane claims my client locked him out. He claims he is the victim of a manic episode. We would like to submit Exhibit A. This is the recording of the 911 call placed by Mrs. Cruz on Tuesday at 4:13 p.m. Dana pressed a button on her laptop, and the audio echoed through the courtroom speakers. Please help me. I am in labor. I am on the porch. The door is locked. My voice on the tape was guttural, filled with pain and terror. Then, the operator's voice. Is there anyone inside, ma'am? Yes, my husband, my mother-in-law. They won't open the door. Then, the background noise of the call picked up the faint, muffled sound of a television, and then, a sound that made the stenographer flinch, the sound of me screaming as a contraction hit, followed by my fists pounding on the wood. Dana stopped the tape. The courtroom was dead silent. That, Dana said, was Zara Cruz begging for entry into her own home while dilating 7 centimeters. We also have the sworn affidavit of Marcus Thorne, the lead EMT on the scene. He states, and I quote, "The house lights were on. We banged on the door for 2 minutes. No one answered, despite movement visible through the window." Judge Sullivan looked at Evan. Her expression had shifted from neutral to icy. "Mr. Lane, were you home at this time?" I was in the shower," Evan stammered. "I didn't hear her. The TV was loud." "We also have a witness statement from the neighbor, Mrs. Gable," Dana continued, holding up a document. "She was standing 10 feet away. She heard Colleen Lane say, 'Don't open it. She will just act out.' Mrs. Lane, did you instruct your son to keep the door locked while his wife was in labor?" Colleen stood up, her face flushing red. "I was trying to teach her a lesson. She was being dramatic. We didn't know she was actually giving birth." "Sit down, ma'am," the bailiff ordered. "So you admit you heard her?" the judge asked, her voice sharp as a razor. "It is not about that," Evan interrupted, desperate to regain control. "She stole my money. She froze the joint account." "That is financial abuse." Dana smiled. It was a terrifying smile. "Let us talk about the money. Your Honor, Mr. Lane claims poverty, yet we have subpoenaed the records of a secondary account at First People's Credit Union, an account held jointly by Evan Lane and Colleen Lane." Dana placed a stack of papers on the judge's bench. "In the last 8 months, $22,000 was transferred from the couple's primary account to this secret account, and 3 days ago, $4,000 was withdrawn from that secret account to pay a security deposit." "A deposit for what?" Judge Sullivan asked. "For a 2-bedroom apartment at Riverview Estates," Dana said, "leased to Evan Lane and a Ms. Jessica Vane." Evan's face went white. He looked like he had been punched in the gut. "Jessica Vane?" the judge repeated. "Who is that?" "His coworker," Dana said, "and his mistress." The air left the room. Colleen looked at Evan, shocked. Apparently, he hadn't told his mother that she was going to have a roommate in their new escape pod. I needed a place to stay because Zara is crazy," Evan shouted, losing his composure completely. "I was protecting my assets." "By stealing your wife's salary and moving in with your girlfriend while your wife was in the hospital?" Judge Sullivan asked. She didn't wait for an answer. She turned to Colleen. "And Mrs. Lane, my clerk tells me there is a document here titled Family Support Agreement. You attempted to have the plaintiff sign this while she was medicated?" "I was just trying to help raise the baby," Colleen sniffed. "Zara works too much. She isn't maternal. This document transfers guardianship to you," the judge said, waving the paper. "This isn't help. This is kidnapping with a fountain pen. You attempted to defraud a vulnerable patient of her parental rights." Judge Sullivan slammed the file shut. The sound was like a gunshot. "Stand up," she ordered. Evan and Colleen stood, trembling. "I have heard enough. Mr. Lane, your petition is denied with prejudice. Furthermore, I am granting Mrs. Cruz exclusive possession of the marital residence effectively immediately. You have 2 hours to collect your personal effects, and you will do so with a police escort. You are not to sleep there. You are not to eat there. You are not to hold a key to that property." "But where will I go?" Evan whined. "I suggest you go to the apartment you rented with Ms. Vane," the judge said dryly, "assuming she still wants you. As for you, Mrs. Lane," the judge turned her gaze to Colleen, "you are hereby restrained from coming within 500 feet of Mrs. Cruz or the minor child, Leo Cruz. Your behavior at the hospital and your complicity in the lockout represents a clear threat to their safety. If you violate this, you will go to jail." "But he is my grandson," Colleen wailed. "Then you should have treated his mother like a human being," Judge Sullivan said. "Court adjourned." The gavel banged. It was the most beautiful sound I had ever heard. We walked out of the courtroom. Evan was slumped against the wall in the hallway, loosening his tie. Colleen was crying into her phone, likely trying to spin the story to a relative. Then, the elevator doors opened. A young woman walked out. She was wearing a tight skirt and looked confused. It was Jessica Vane. She saw Evan and marched over. "Evan," she said, her voice echoing in the marble corridor. "The leasing office just called. The check bounced. You said you had the money. They are canceling the lease." Evan looked at her, then at me. I was standing there, holding the court order in my hand. I can fix it," Evan stammered. "You can't fix anything," Jessica snapped. "You told me she was the crazy one. You told me you had the house." She turned on her heel and walked away, the click-clack of her heels sounding like applause. Dana touched my arm. "One last thing." She walked over to the bailiff who was standing near Evan. She handed him a piece of paper. "Officer," Dana said loud enough for Evan to hear, "this is a receipt from the locksmith who changed the locks on Tuesday. You will notice the signature at the bottom is Evan Lane, but the box checked says owner title holder. Since we established in court that he is not on the deed, this constitutes forgery and fraud under state law. My client would like to file charges." Evan looked at the paper. He looked at me. His eyes were wide, filled with the realization that he hadn't just lost a divorce. He was about to lose his freedom. "You can't do this," he whispered. "I am your husband." I walked up to him. I looked him dead in the eye. "You aren't my husband," I said calmly. "You are just a trespasser who overstayed his welcome." I turned to Colleen, who was staring at me with open-mouthed horror. "And Colleen," I said, "don't bother knocking. The doorbell has been disabled for your number." I walked out of the courthouse into the bright afternoon sun. The air tasted sweet. I hailed a cab, gave the driver my address, and leaned back in the seat. They had tried to lock me out of my own life. They had tried to steal my home, my money, and my son. But they forgot the most important rule of home ownership. Never give your keys to someone who doesn't know the value of what is inside. They locked me out when I was giving birth. Now, for the rest of their lives, there is not a single door in my world that will ever open for them again. Thank you so much for listening to this story. I would love to know where you are tuning in from today. Are you listening while driving to work, cooking dinner, or maybe just relaxing at home? Please let me know in the comments below so we can connect. If you enjoyed seeing justice served, please make sure to subscribe to the Olivia Revenge Stories channel, like this video, and hit that hype button so this story can reach even more people who need a reminder that sometimes the best revenge is simply changing the locks.